based on what you guys are telling me, can Bitcoin 2x by the end of 2024 and hit that coveted 100K?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin can hit that in Q2. Maybe even sooner than that.
How high can Bitcoin go in 2024?
The nature of this buyer does not care if it's driving Bitcoin up 5% every week. It will just keep on buying.
Is buying Ethereum because of BlackRock's ETH ETF application a better investment?
Is Ethereum the better play in your mind? Like, people wish they could have bought Bitcoin when BlackRock first filed.
And what other altcoins realistically have the most potential?
This chart signifies daily active users as of 2 days ago. 5 chains have nearly 80% of all the active users.
This is that crypto video you want to send to a friend.
We are in a bull market. We were in an early bull for 13, 14 months. Now we're in a full bull.
Of course, a part of Real Vision's 2-day event, the Crypto Gathering, completely free, great information, full event linked below.
So if you are thinking you're going to buy back in cheaper later, you're kidding yourself.
And watch today's whole video because the panelists do have a little healthy debate towards the end.
I don't agree with what you said. I hope that's okay.
Tell me, please.
We don't know if Bitcoin's going to be around in 2030, to be honest.
Welcome, everybody, to the Crypto Gathering, hosted by Real Vision in collaboration with Polkadot and Kraken. Honored to kick off the day's events talking about the crypto big picture. My name's Austin, of course, host and co-founder of Altcoin Daily, with 2 great guests as we talk big picture crypto. So, of course, I'm joined with Michael Anderson, aka Mando. He's the co-founder of Rect Guy and the Mando Minutes newsletter, huge name in the space. And of course, James of Invest Answers, equally huge guy, needs no introduction. Great to be here with you guys.
Thanks. Yeah, great to be with you too.
I look forward to this.
Guys, I'm just going to kick it right off. You know, the crypto market is thriving. We're inching closer and closer to old all-time highs. Maybe I'll just start it off with James. But again, this is an open forum. We're talking amongst each other. Let's start with Bitcoin. What's the current impact of the Bitcoin ETFs? Is that question played out? Was it a dud? Current impact?
I think it's I had some very bullish expectations for the ETF impact. But it has far exceeded my expectations, if that makes any sense. I believed in my total bull case scenario for the next 12 months. I thought we'd hit $50 billion, and we're on track to doing nearly $100 billion. So that's 2x my bull target. Now, when you break it down to daily issuance versus, excuse me for that, turn that off, daily issuance versus the actual daily absorption by just the 9 new ETFs, it is stunning. It's on some days it's 10, 12x the actual daily issuance. So when you propel that forward post-halving, that becomes 18 to 24x. And yesterday we had a little bit of a weaker day than normal. DCG is offloading their $1.3 billion of GBTC. And that has a little bit of an impact on the market, but that'll be gone, I'd say, in another 4 trading days or so. Maybe 8 on the outside. And then it's just buckled in for the halving. Then the hype will start to build. People will start Googling, what is Bitcoin halving? And then FOMO times begins. And it's just what's amazing to me this time around is the hardness. We're going into a diminishing supply cycle, which has never happened into a halving before. And there's much more awareness. And now Bitcoin and crypto digital assets are the 11th new asset category out there on earth. So it's been blessed, it's been rubber stamped, and I am beyond excited for the next 12 months.
That's palpable. Yeah, Mando.
The only thing I would really add there is just the nature of the buyer. So like I used to trade, we used to trade high yield bonds and securities, and we used to have ETFs in that market, and they're an interesting sort of buyer in that they are indiscriminate to where the price is. I think all the sort of money that's come in, even on the institutional side into crypto, largely there may have been strategies about buying it, or they would have like waited for certain times. They're more like active managers coming in. They would take bonds that we used to trade, and they would actually take them to negative yield. Like we used to trade bonds with call options attached to them. And the ETF would just keep buying. They do not care if it's the wrong time to buy, if it looks, if it's been 10 straight days of it going higher and the RSI is at like 95, they do not care. And I think that's something that the market will kind of have to get used to, is that we will start to see these these consecutive runs where we start to push the edges of maybe technical indicators and things start to feel frothy, and it will just keep on going. So that's the thing that's really caught me on this, is that if you're a chartist looking at some of these, I think you can get burnt quite badly, because I actually think we're just going to keep on going higher, provided that, we haven't got some massive macro meltdown. But yeah, the nature of this buyer does not care if it's driving Bitcoin up 5% every week. It will just keep on buying.
Yeah. James, please.
Well, one other point to add too, and I do have a slide. I don't know if they can share it, but it just shows you the amount of Bitcoin taken out of the system every single day, which is staggering. Yesterday, we lost 2,613 Bitcoin, but that was one of the weakest days we've had in the past 2 weeks. So if you look at the average takeout out of the market, it's over 9,000 Bitcoin a day. You annualize that. That is an insane amount, like way more than 10 times the annual production for Bitcoin. In fact, over the last 26 trading days for these 9 new ETFs, they have pulled out literally the annual creation for 2024. And that's something that people new to the space don't realize how little Bitcoin there is. And this is going to have a huge effect on price as we go forward, unless, of course, the laws of supply and demand do not work, which I believe they do. So that's a big something to be excited for.
And like you said, the demand shock has never been more clear. The supply shock has never been more clear in Bitcoin at this stage going into the halving. On Altcoin Daily, we talk to an audience of millions on Twitter, on YouTube, average cryptocurrency investors. And I like to ask guests on the channel, just let's cut to the chase, your speculation for the future. Based on what you guys are telling me, can Bitcoin 2x by the end of 2024 and hit that coveted 100K?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin can hit that in Q2. Maybe even sooner than that. But I definitely think it could do that. It could do that relatively quickly. With the nature, like as we've already gone into, the amount that's being bought is kind of unprecedented. I think the halving is more a narrative. Maybe you'll feel the effects of that over the medium term rather than like day one. But the ETFs you're going to be feeling every single day. And I think it's not just that. Maybe you have Hong Kong about to open itself up to the ETFs as well. And that was going to come out some point in the next 90 days, and that was spoken about a couple of weeks ago. So they're going to push forward with that too. So you're going to have another wave of institutional money coming out of Asia, which will also be going through the same sort of dynamics. So I really do think this is the year where it does go institutionalized, and yeah, I think we could see Bitcoin hit 100K very, very quickly.
Yeah, in fact, it's not just Hong Kong, which is kind of the gateway for the Chinese folks to get some exposure to assets other than real estate, which has bit them in the butts over the last year or two. But then you've got Singapore as a fast follower, Vietnam, and who else is popping in there lately? Japan, or changing their laws to get access to not just digital assets, but also US ETFs, which is a big change. And the Japanese are voracious savers. But back to price targets, I have another quick slide here, if you could pop up. And if we assume what's happened over the last 26, 27 days, the price target for Bitcoin is ridiculous based on the multiplier. And that multiplier is 59 now. Back when Tesla bought Bitcoin, it was 21. It's changed radically because it's a lot scarcer now. And of course, the asset is harder and there's much more money coming in. But if we assume just a quarter of the flow that has come in over the past 26, 27 trading days, just a quarter, not $500 million a day, but 125 million, that price target takes us to 173,000. Just assuming 9 ETFs, nobody else is buying. That is crazy.
This Bitcoin bull run largely was led by BlackRock back last year when they filed for the Bitcoin Spot ETF. They have also put their name behind Ethereum. The first potential for that to get approved is happening in a few months. Probably will get pushed off to the end of the year, if not next. But is Ethereum the better play in your mind? Like, people wish they could have bought Bitcoin when BlackRock first filed for that ETF for Bitcoin.
I think it's a little bit early, too early to say. It does feel like Genzo's probably going to drag his feet there slightly. I don't really know how, from a court perspective. It feels like could they have the futures ETF? It's going to be quite a difficult thing to argue, at least over the long term, that they shouldn't have a spot ETF. But I'd be unsurprised if they drag their feet. I think if you go into Polymarket right now, it's somewhere between 50 to 60% probability that this happens by the summer. But, that's a 50-50 bet. So if it does get delayed, I do think it will underperform. I think it's interesting to see that over the course of the last 12 months, the daily active users of ETH has been going lower. I mean, it's been a less used chain for sure over the last 12 months. And part of that's gone to L2s, but as in on the L1, it's definitely been a less used for various different applications. So I do think that part of the use case of ETH is waned slightly. People have been driven to other monolithic chains. Solana's obviously come out very, very strong on that move. I think for the next 3 to 6 months, I've banked on the idea that it's probably more like 60% probability, 60 to 70 that this ETF goes through. So I have put on quite a large ETH longs since the start of the year, and those have performed well. But I do think there's probably a time to take profit there. I think we could head up to around 4K over the next couple of months. But I do think, you have to be wary that this isn't a slam dunk like the Bitcoin one was. This could be a long drawn out process. And in crypto, the time horizon, the opportunity cost of money is so ridiculous that if that feels like it's going to be dragged out further, then it can get forgotten about relatively quickly.
Invest Answers. I know you had some charts on other chains in crypto. Like, what are you most excited about besides Bitcoin and maybe besides ETH?
Well, that's interesting. So Mando did mention something very interesting, that is users and adoption. When you look at, there's actually a slide for that real quick. What's stunning is, as in markets, the winner typically takes most. But what this chart signifies is daily active users as of 2 days ago. 5 chains have nearly 80% of all the active users. They're near protocol, but within near protocol, Pareto efficiently, literally one app on near protocol makes up 80% of the actual users. So you can ignore near a little bit. Solana is there as basically number 1 if you pull out the near stuff. Then Matic is number 2, ETH is number 3, ZK Sync, and R. But just those 5 chains really make up all the action. And when you look at Ethereum, it does capture a lot of value, but it also captures a lot of value within the layer 2 ecosystem. But there's been a very drastic move away from ETH, and that's signified here by dBridge. You can see the big move out of the actual chain. Stablecoins, big move from other ones. We saw the Tron news today. They're basically shutting down. Everything's moving to Circle on Solana. And, we do have one chain that you asked that a lot of things are moving to. And one of the narratives for this run is what I call the black hole update, where everything is depinning over to Solana. You got Aave, Maker, Render, Circle, Visa, Paxos, PayPal, and most recently Filecoin. And that is a drastic change. So what happens to ETH, I don't know. There's still a lot of, uncertainty as to what Gensler would do. If he gives the blessing to ETH to have an ETF, he literally has no leg to stand on to deny any other crypto. Because like XRP is so-called not a security, there's no chance ETH is either, and that opens the floodgates for everything else. And I don't think they're ready for that. There's also some complications too regarding what happens with staking and rewards under an ETF circumstance. And in terms of custody of all the ETH, that could make it very decentralized when it comes to, for example, Coinbase holding all of the ETH going forward. So there's lots of complexity. I think Mando is probably right. 70% chance gets approved. But if it gets approved, everything will get approved. And then we'll have ETFs from everywhere. And there's one other point too regarding, can it drive up a lot of price action? I'm not sure, because when you look at the analog of the Bitcoin future ETF versus the Ethereum one, the Ethereum future ETF was a flop. It didn't gain any traction. And maybe that's a precursor to what could happen with the spot ETF for ETH going forward.
Mando.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Obviously, the ETH ETF was a complete flop. I think these ETF providers they're driven by one thing, and that's fees. So it is going to be maybe a world if they are driven by those fees for the ETH ETF, they'll probably sell it to their clients. But there is a world we know where there isn't that sort of demand, and as soon as the Bitcoin ETF went live that day, or remember that day, like fake went live when the SEC put out the fake tweet, ETH ripped. You could see a situation that even on the sort of days where it feels like the ETH ETF is going to be soon, you'll see Solana do like a huge run. So I do see that the market looks, 6 months forward whenever any of this sort of stuff happens. I think the ETH trade has become more precarious, and I think everyone's kind of been aware of that over the last 12 months, just because ETH has felt less like money and moved more towards kind of the similar sort of gold narratives that Bitcoin has. Obviously, it has deflationary aspects to it right now, but the idea of people using it for DeFi, for NFTs, for meme coins, all this sort of stuff, it's not the same that it was. And that's the precarious nature of bleeding edge tech. Like that might happen to Solana in 4 or 5 years, but that does mean that for blockchains, in my eyes, to be their most useful, they need to have applications, and they need to have widespread applications. And ETH has slightly waned during this cycle. I think that is a more precarious trade. I'm not banking the house on ETH. That's for certain.
And Mando, you talk about applications, like real use case, because so much of the time people focus on price, but in terms of how it's changing the world or new trends or narratives in crypto, what are you seeing as the most potential in 2024? For example, is it DePIN? Is it digital identity? Is it NFTs like in 2021? For you personally, what are you most bullish on?
I've always felt like the number one use case for crypto is replacing financial transactions. I think that is just dwarfs every other potential use case. And the reason why I'm bullish on Solana is also because it has the most stablecoin transfers. It is dominating that as well. I do think some of the other use cases can be cycle-like precarious. You can oversell promises. We saw that in kind of the last cycle. The new cycle has let's say DePIN, it has AI, it has gaming, it has a few of the old ones that have come back. I think the RWA narrative is the strongest long term for me. Like the idea that, again, we will move a number of different financial assets which are currently already traded in traditional financial markets on chain. I think that's a very, very strong and understandable one. I think that the ones that are driving the current narratives, I think you have to be wary that they can also fall apart during a bear market. Like I do think some of the valuations that we're seeing in gaming and AI already seem a bit frothy, even though I'm in those trades. So, the strongest one for me might be a bit boring, but I do think it's TradFi moving on into this sector, but maybe some jazz to it. I think the RWA trade, you can start a much broader level of tokenization, just like the securitization of like the 1980s. You could have that sort of a boom happen in crypto, and that would be, there's 400 trillion of assets. Like you don't really need another use case other than starting to move some of those onto to being traded in crypto.
James, I see you chomping at the bit. What trends are you liking?
I feel like I'm echoing Mando a little bit, but I like first of all, the 2 Ds, which are what I call DePIN and DEXs. And then, of course, the stablecoin use case, payments. You can actually bundle them together almost. AI is going to be big as well. The tokenization of everything, or RWA, is big. And gambling and gaming, because we've seen some dApps really take off in Asia that are around things like shopping and gambling and stuff like that. So there could be one of those 100 million user dApps pop up there very closely. But I think either way, it's going to be interesting. So have heavy concentrations in assets that do a lot of this, and also some focus plays that cover some of it too. I think it's a good way forward.
So I want to pose this next question to both of you. Let's start with Mando. What is something you learned or that you're taking into, like a best piece of advice you would give a crypto investor in the market, but something you learned that you were just reminded taking into the cycle? And maybe I'll start again, just to give you an example. This is something I know, but take emotion out of it. Don't be the sheep. When the market's hypey and speculative and exciting, maybe that's not the time to buy. That's the time to hold, or just, understand the plan you came in with and have that long-term perspective, just like when, back when FTX collapsed and the markets, there was so much fear in the market. That was a great time to accumulate. Dollar cost average in, understanding you're taking that long-term perspective. So for me, something I'm reminded of going into this cycle is just take emotion out of it, stick to the plan. What's something for you guys?
Yeah, I think psychology is obviously the whole of trading. I think running yourself as that or bringing yourself back to that sort of level of focus is super important. I think one thing that is very, very clear to me, even in like the foothills of this cycle, is that new narratives and new coins will just not make sense, and they will decimate old narratives and old coins in terms of valuation and how high they can go. So I always think focus on the new stuff. Like there are some very, very, very good and used projects out of the old in the old traditional coins from 2021 or 2017 or even longer. But you will always, the new coins just can keep on going higher because there's no bag holders generally. Everyone's normally in a very good state. So in a bull market, they can just go to crazy levels. Now, if we feel like that's turning into a bear market or we feel like we're starting to top out, those things can crash down to earth like you would never believe. But at the same time, at this point in the cycle, where I still think we're relatively early, I don't really feel like retail's here by and large. I think this is really an ETF move, and we're starting to get picked up by more mainstream. But it's, I don't have friends who are not in crypto asking me about crypto. So I don't think we're close to that sort of a move yet. I think it's still good to pick up a new narrative. This is why I still think like gaming, AI, some of these newer coins and some of maybe like deep in, they can just go to crazy sort of levels, and you don't really need to make that much sense of them, particularly the ones with, in crypto, you have to be aware of current market cap versus fully diluted market cap. And the fully diluted market caps are the ones that really don't make sense. WorldCoin's trading at 75 billion. You have a ton of other new coins, which are airdrops launching at 10 to 20 billion, 30 billion. I think even StockNet hit yesterday. So those sort of things I think can just keep on hitting new highs. And if you get one in a good sector, you kind of should hold on. And then the other second bit of that is, I think it's very, very, I do think it's important to kind of have levels, have a game plan, like you said, to take profits. In a bull market, I think the worst thing you can feel is that FOMO of not being invested in something. So I would always never be fully out, never be like, right, I'm out. I'm never going to be in that coin again. I would always just keep bags in narratives that you like, and then you'll follow it more. You'll never feel that FOMO if it goes up 20%. The worst feeling is not having anything, and then a coin that you liked moves, and then you that's when you do the chase move and you get yourself wrecked. So I would never be fully out of the coins that you like because it will help you from a mental standpoint.
100% de-risk, but keep a moon bag because the market could do anything. James.
It's Mando, I nearly imagine you were reading my deck. These are 5 don'ts I put together. I said I'd do it on Twitter earlier, and we're very similar. I have a quick little slide. First of all, I always say don't chase, replace, don't FOMO, avoid impulsive decisions based on fear, have a process. So important, and research a lot before you invest. Very similar, echoing what Mando said. In addition, another thing you said is old tech versus new tech. Literally, the speed of development of everything in the world, not just crypto, is astounding. Stuff that was built 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago is becoming very dated very fast. There was a StarkNet airdrop. It took users 6 hours to cash in their airdrop yesterday, and the chain was running at a third of a transaction per second. And this is a layer 2 scaling solution on Ethereum. That just says it all right there of how not ready these old chains are. So think about the new stuff very carefully. Also, look beyond the hype. There's literally everything you read in the mainstream media, on Twitter, 98% of it is going to be garbage as people just pumping their own bags. So be very, very careful what you read. Have a process. Look at data. Also, respect the market cycles. This goes with everything. Understand and respect. We are in a bull market. We were in an early bull for 13, 14 months. Now we're in a full bull. So if you are thinking you're going to buy back in cheaper later, you're kidding yourself. So understand where we are in the cycle. And finally, one of the things that I think is very important for new and old people is security. It takes a lifetime to make wealth and a second to lose it these days. And the scammers are coming for your bags. So when you're involved in crypto, you are your own bank. If you don't have your security buttoned up, if you don't have stuff secured, whether it's your brokerage account or your crypto account or your hot wallet or your cold wallet or anything else, just make sure you have all that buttoned up. They'd be the 5 things that I would stress for people in the space right now.
You go on Twitter, everybody's bullish. All of us in here, for good reason, are bullish.
I don't think so.
Oh, please.
I see a lot of bearish sentiments, a lot of people that didn't pack their bags early enough, and they're wishing the market would come back to earth for them. And they are very upset and extremely bearish. And I'd say 30 to 40, maybe 50% of people are still very bearish out there. Mando, I see you nodding your head. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I do a podcast with Keyboard Monkey, who's kind of a relatively well-known bear in the space. But I felt when that move happened, just to maybe, I don't know how much people have been following crypto. Maybe they're just coming into this stage. But this bull kind of started with Bitcoin at 26K, and it had been trending around that level for a long time. And it had been very painful. And I think ETH even went down to like 1,500. And then everything just kept on going higher. And I really felt at that time, all the way up to when it went to about 36K, and then maybe even when it went up to kind of in the 40s, everyone was underinvested. Everyone missed that first move from 26K because it felt like we were going to be in there for a long time, and everyone was getting very, very bared up about the general state of crypto, just like the lack of mainstream adoption. So I have felt like it's been a synthetic short, I would call it. Like it's the idea that people feel underinvested and they feel like they need to chase it. I do still think people are waiting for right now. I see a lot of people on my timeline who are, like I said, who are chartists, who are seeing things getting overextended, and they don't see the nature of the buyer that's come in. And I think that's also going to be quite a painful one, because I think people will give up too early on moves which don't really retrace in the way that they would, or maybe some of the on-chain metrics don't make as much sense as they did in the past. So I think that's something to be very, very aware of in this market. I'm very, very bullish, but you also have to respect the volatility. Like, do I think Bitcoin could go down to 48K today on the back of Nvidia earnings, or do I think ETH could, having had this massive run up? One thing that I think hasn't really happened is like there hasn't really been that much respecting of like the volatility of a bear market as we go higher. You start to see some leverage come into the system over the last couple of days, so you saw a little bit more volatility. But I do think, I'm not blind to the idea that we could have big wicks down. That's just the nature of the product, I think.
Yeah, that's honestly my question was, what would need to go wrong, or what are you guys still worried about, or what's the other side of the Bitcoin? Leverage would be one. James, on a macro level, like what could go wrong?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned a macro level. If you think about where we are in crypto first, I've got a simple little positioning slide that I like to use to explain to newcomers how early we are. So you take the world population, 8 billion people, and this is a very bullish target of how many people have adopted crypto. Say 400,000. It's really probably only 200,000, maybe 250,000, but just assume it's 400,000. 5% own it. The crypto market cap is only 2 trillion. That means the exposure per person is only 5,000 when there's 900 trillion in assets on the earth, and the crypto share of total assets is 0.22. So again, this was just blessed as the 11th asset class, and there's no penetration whatsoever. So that's the macro view of crypto out of the gate. What could go wrong? I think one of them is the Fed could jack rates, which I think is impossible for it to do. A lot of people are talking about that in the markets, but that's how markets work. I think if the Fed were to do that, or not cut rates by June at the latest, it means they have another plan in place, which is to incinerate the economy and major industries in the economy as well. I think that could potentially hurt Bitcoin. And in terms of the usual black swan that would be like a double spend problem or something, or Satoshi's wallet coming alive. That's all I see out there in terms of black swans. I don't see anything. Oh, World War III, of course, as well. The usual suspects.
Even though Bitcoin thrived with the Russian-Ukraine conflict, Bitcoin thrived in that circumstance.
Well, my old adage is always Bitcoin loves a crisis, whether it's a banking crisis or a war. It takes on gold aspects during crises, and we're seeing some more of that. So there will be an initial ding, it'll dip, and then rebound very fast.
Yeah, that's Bitcoin will. I mean, we could go lower, but Bitcoin will always even outperform even during a really bad black swan style crisis because it has got this digital gold aspect to it, and that's what TradFi is also like slightly selling it as. It's weird for macro, like some of the more tech, let's say active user heavy chains, I think have a slightly different narrative to Bitcoin in that sense. I can't really see from a current macro perspective, like there's no world where they can continue to increase rates with the level of global debt. And that's just not the way that, China, Japan, and even like now Europe and the US are now starting to trend. So it really doesn't feel like that's going to suddenly trend. Like inflation is slightly higher, and you've seen some hedging of interest rate options going higher from the Fed, but like nothing crazy. Like we're talking about on the margin rather than inflation going up to like 9%. I do think some of the limiting factors, like I said before, my bull case over the long term for crypto, or my biggest bull case, is the idea that really we start to trade a lot of the traditional finance markets on crypto, and also we start to create our own securitized markets. So I think some of the limiting factors there really are from the regulation side, from the in the US. So if that was to maybe have another democratic government come in, which was less crypto friendly, and we get a repeat of these 4 months, I think that could be a little bit damaging, maybe even more than the Fed, to maybe the number of active users we get on. At the moment, the SEC is kind of turning a blind eye to the securitization of government bonds. Kind of makes sense, but they're not doing it to a lot of other assets. And that for me is where the daily active users for crypto really goes parabolic. That's what I think needs to happen for some of these chains to really like reach their full potential in terms of revenue. So if that gets delayed by another 4 years, that wouldn't be great, I don't think.
Speaking of 4 years, US presidential election is coming up later this year. Big picture does not matter, but what is better for the country? Let's just say it's Trump and Biden. What's better for Bitcoin? Excuse me. What's better for Bitcoin? Doesn't matter.
It really depends. Like I just said, like it's really if you can have there's going to be some sort of stablecoin regulation potentially on the floor already in this year, although it probably won't pass. You just need the ability for that to be pushed through. It's weird that the Democratic Party seems to be moving slightly more anti-crypto. That's not the case everywhere. Like it's not like a Democratic versus Republican thing about crypto. But it really just needs to be enough people on either side who are willing to be able to do it. So I would guess some sort of consensus in the House would help. I would say. So I don't really mind about who the president is. I know Trump's obviously selling NFTs and go a bit more crypto friendly, but I don't think that really passes regulation. He's not going to sit there on day one and be like, yeah, we need to put forward a crypto bill. I think that requires bipartisan support. So ideally, that's just a gradual change, and you start to see that in some of the representatives elected this year.
James, you look like a guy that bought a Trump NFT issued on Polygon. What are your thoughts on the election for Bitcoin?
First of all, I would never use Polygon. Second of all, I've never bought an NFT. I have really nothing good to say.
Never bought an NFT?
Never.
Oh, man.
Do you even crypto, bro?
Yeah. No, I like trading crypto, but NFTs, JPEGs, I get it.
I came up in the crypto space, man. We owned 72 Bored Apes at one stage.
Wow.
That was
Yeah,
that
and
was
I've seen
great.
people. I saw one guy he bought a Mad Lad or something like that for pennies, and he just sold it for $30,000.
Exactly,
It's
right?
like incredible. But yeah, it's just something I need to. I only invest in things that I understand, and I don't understand JPEGs having value. I understand it, yes, I understand scarcity, but never touch those things. But regarding politics, I think it's been very clear since 2020 for the world is not only how fragile and broken governments and monetary systems are, but also how corrupt leadership is on both sides. So I will not make any comments on either. My dream would be to have somebody under 80 with an IQ above 80. That's all I ask for. And I know it's a big reach, but what can I say?
Dare to dream.
Yeah, exactly. Dare to dream. So I'm not a political person, but we need somebody that gets what's coming down the pike. And it's way more than just crypto. The world is changing very fast. And when you have octogenarians, whatever they are in office, making decisions who have no clue what's happening in the world, it's just going to be a disaster. So that's my take.
Gentlemen, in our final 7-8 minutes, this next question actually is just from Mando, since you did get a little more into NFTs. I see Bitcoin ordinals popping up. I see a real consolidation of the most popular NFTs on Ethereum. I also see different ERC token standards for different Ethereum NFTs. So as an average guy looking into the future of NFTs, how much weight do you put into ordinals versus the OGs like the Bored Apes versus a new token standard? Like, what should I be looking at as just a speculator?
I think the two medium-term trends for me this cycle, when I looked at this a few months ago, was Solana and Ordinals. Like, those are the two I just felt like were going to be some of the biggest themes of this cycle. And then Solana played out very, very quickly and now is consolidating at a high level. And Ordinals just keeps on going. I think Ordinals is really the future of Bitcoin from a fee perspective. It's the only real way I can see it working as obviously supply diminishes. So you need to have this sort of ecosystem. And if you see where a lot of the VC investing has been going as well, it's building like a L2s for Bitcoin, ZK rollups, that sort of stuff. So I think ordinal tech and ordinals being that maybe a defining change in Bitcoin is quite a big deal. So I do think getting behind some of those narratives makes sense. You've seen, and it's a new narrative as well, which is just perfect. Like, you can really run those up. Some of the ETH token standard stuff, I have to say, like, I know the people involved in that on a daily basis. I wouldn't put that much credibility in too much of that. I think there's lots of ETH token standards that come out. I'm not too sure if that's like revolutionary in the same way that ordinals is going to be revolutionary for like the future of Bitcoin. Though there have been, like, they're good to pump. Like, you can pump some of these new tokens because they can be both fungible and non-fungible at the same time, and there's various different plays on that as well. But I'm not as bullish on that. And I think it's the same as with coins. Like, I do think that Pudgy Penguins, for example, has managed to hit an all-time high, but very, very rarely is that going to happen. Like, an old NFT project, and I'm part of an old NFT project that's trying to do like revolutionary new things, but for our floor to do a 2x versus a new project with new owners, it's just like, it's impossible to be able to like do that sort of thing, or it requires unbelievable amounts of effort to be able to do that sort of stuff. So I would always be looking out for new things each week in the NFT space. NFTs obviously are at the risk spectrum really, really far to the either left or right, whichever way you want to put it. But they are, you can very easily lose your money. It's basically like culture GoFundMes. So you have to be very, very careful about what you're buying into and the narratives that you're buying into. But I do think, looking at some of the newer ones, maybe some of the ones around gaming feels like the one that I think could pump for the longest. But I would still be wary, like dumping your ETH into a NFT project that came out last cycle. I do think that could be a pain trade if you're going to try and catch it. Ordinals, some of the newer collections, they could just keep on breaking at new highs. Remember Bored Apes went to 450 grand last cycle. I think some of the top Ordinals collections are in the tens of thousands, but Bitcoin is what, 2x the market cap of or 2.5x the market cap of ETH, maybe even more. No, around that. So yeah, you could have people going crazy with this sort of stuff if they really want to run it up.
I want to end with just a big picture prediction for crypto over this next decade. I'll start as an example. I think with the revolution of cryptocurrency, winners will no longer be the only ones that write the history books. For example, in the olden days, the winners of the war came into the new town, burned the libraries. We never knew their side. With truly an immutable, digital, global blockchain, whether that's writing on Bitcoin or Ethereum or just the strongest blockchain out there, for the very first time in history, losers and winners can have an immutable way to share their story that will go on for eternity as long as the blockchain is around. That has never happened before in human history. And that's huge for just being able to record human history and see where we've come from. For you guys, as you look to the future, what's a hot take you have on crypto? James, I want to hear from you.
You want to go first? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird perspective. First of all,
Do you agree?
No, I don't. I believe it's very important to understand history, but most people nowadays don't have the attention span for it, so they don't go back and dig and study. Therefore, I don't agree with what you said. I hope that's okay.
Tell me, please.
But what's going to happen, my vision of the future for crypto is it will evolve very fast. And what's hot today will be dead tomorrow. And that's just a reality. And who knows? And I warn people as well. We don't know if Bitcoin's going to be around in 2030, to be honest.
Well, I'm just saying, as long as the blockchain is there, and let me give you an example, James, because I want to change your mind. You know, one of the first inscriptions on Bitcoin was Chancellor on the brink of bankruptcy, whatever. You know, and if a war happened and this was written on paper, that would be destroyed forever. As long as the Bitcoin blockchain is out there, that's immutable. That's what I meant.
Yeah, that's true. But the question is, can the world process 100 trillion inscriptions? No. They'll remember the first and the most important, the historical ones, like anything else, like the Treaty of Versailles or something. But not everything that's done. And that's kind of why I think Mando said when you talk about NFTs being out on the risk curve, they're way out on the risk curve. That's why they're too risky for me. And I take on incredible amounts of risk with how I trade. But they are something that I don't feel comfortable with because I can't appraise or value a project or determine a floor or anything like that for NFTs. So it's not for me. It's not quantifiable. And when I can't measure it, I can't touch it. That's just me. So that's just my take on history. I don't think people spend enough time studying how important it is. And I know the world now, we're going into a new talk about AI today, but that is going to radically change everything. And, you know, we look at the number of blockchains that was spun up over the next 3 years, like layer 2s on ETH. There could be 20,000 more of them. And the question is, who wins? And the answer is winner takes most. But in crypto, adoption and loyalty is key, but loyalty is also fickle. People will flick from one chain to another in a heartbeat. If something's better, cheaper, and faster, they will migrate instantly. And we're seeing that happen as well.
Yeah, I would more echo that actually as a concept. Like I think just expect massive change constantly. Like if you think about crypto as kind of I would say the baby boomers all got rich on TradFi and running up property prices, and then we kind of created our own financial system to kind of get wealthy in a different way. Like people aren't just going to come in, in 10 years and it's going to kind of represent very similar to how we would look at like our grandparents and be like, oh, you had it so easy buying your house at this price, and then it did a 10x. Like they're going to be like, oh, you had it so easy buying Bitcoin. We're just going to make our own one. And they're gonna own that new narrative. And I think be very, very wary that if we create the rails to this new financial system, that people are going to create new things. So I'm not the sort of person that that has like an infinitely long time horizon of belief in the current state of things, like oh, Bitcoin's going to be around for 30, 40, 50 years. Like I think you have to understand the fallacy of thinking that the future generations are just going to buy our bags and be happy doing it. So yeah, I think expect revolutionary change constantly.
I love this. Guys, you guys are two of the smartest people in cryptocurrency. I follow you both. If there's anybody out there that's not even subscribed to Real Vision, which you should, but also these two gentlemen, highly recommend. We kind of already did this, but just final thoughts for the crypto community out there.
Yeah, from my side, like just strap in, like make sure you're picking up on narratives. I think follow the right people. We're our mid cycle, we're not early cycle. I think we still got a decent move to happen. I do think it could happen relatively soon with the way that the ETF flows are getting in. So I think now's the time to be paying attention to kind of reopen the Coinbase app or whatever trading app you had from the old cycle. You can still get in good narratives. And pay attention to listen to all the stuff we just said in terms of psychology and investing. And I think you can have a good cycle from here on out.
Yeah. And Austin, thank you for the compliment, but you're also a great follower yourself. So make sure you follow Austin.
Yeah, exactly.
Altcoin Daily. So there's 5 things that I think are very, very important. Like in any investing, is patience is key. I always say be a hunter in the woods. Understand the narratives of what's coming. Find winners. Exercise. If you pick a narrative, find who is dominating and winning in that area, and then lay your traps and wait. When you start chasing pumps and chasing what's hot, you're just going to get your butt handed to you, because that's the way crypto is designed to work. People want you to chase their pumps so they can sell you the bags and then dump on you. That's how it works. And avoid rash decisions during market fluctuations. Crypto is extremely volatile, but it's also exponential. That's why I say lay your traps. Get into your positions and sit back and enjoy the ride, because these are exponential times. That's how I would close.
And I would end things, for the people asking, should I buy now? I'm underweight, I'm overweight, whatever. I would say a year from now, 6 months from now, you will never regret learning more and understanding more of this huge revolution we are going through. So if you're going to spend nothing else, take these next 6 months and learn as much as you can. Thank you, everybody. This has been the Crypto Gathering, the Crypto Big Picture. Many more panels to go in this Real Vision gathering. But I'll leave it to you.